So, hello to those watching on the video. I've learned that if I just hit record and walk, first shot that you get is of usually part of my torso. So that's probably not too pleasant a way to start for you all. But hello, everybody. Welcome to Christian Formation today. We're continuing on with reading through Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I've read this and seen movie versions of this many times before, but I've never looked at this intentionally with a lens of faith. There's a lot going on. I mean, clearly they reference scripture and Christian charity and things like that. But this is, I don't know about you, but this has been kind of a fun way to read this through this lens. Last week, there was a little homework. Did anybody try drawing something? Let's see, it was page 56. It was to do your own drawing, artistic rendering of the Ghost of Christmas Past. Did anybody take a crack at that? All right. I didn't either, but mine would have been stick figures. So I wouldn't
I have no words. That's a really skinny ghost.
That's
Bill around it.
Mine's transparent.
Yeah, holy ghost.
Oh, there you go. Well done.
It's here. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
Mine's transparent.
Did anybody take a minute to look through on page 55? That last question has some references from John. First John about light and dark. Did anybody take a chance or have a chance to look through that? Knowing, I know full well how busy this time.
I got the book out. Open it all.
That's okay. Got plenty to talk about today. If you get a chance, I mean, the assigned reading for Christmas Day. So Christmas Eve is the lesson we know so well of Luke 2 of Jesus' birth. And then you might get Matthew 2 with the wise men, or maybe the dream that Joseph has. But Christmas Day, the assigned reading is John chapter 1. It doesn't talk about mangers and Bethlehem. It doesn't talk about shepherds or wise men. It's in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. The Word was with God. Word made flesh, and the light had come into the world, the light of darkness. So John 1 sets that light and dark theme, and it runs all through the rest of John's Gospel, and it plays into the 3 John letters. Useless Bible trivia for you. Do you know the adjective for John? So, like, if you're talking about Mark stuff, it's Markin. If it's Luke stuff, it's Lucan. Do you know John's? Johannine. Yeah. So the Johannine letters, first, second, and third John, all carry through this theme of light and dark. So, for your Christmas devotions and meditations, I'll still hold that one up there. For those at home, if you don't have the book, it's John 3, 19 to 21. That's after the visit from Nicodemus at John 8, which I believe is maybe part of the healing of the blind man. John 12, and then 1 John 1, 5. They all talk about light. So, I'm thinking of how the Ghost of Christmas Past was basically a candle person, shedding light onto these things that Scrooge had left in the darkness of his past. That's where that comes from. This week we get the Ghost of Christmas Present. For this one, I will confess, I always think of the Muppets version, that giant Muppety guy. So we're going to be on page 80 now. 80. The second spirit of Christmas took Scrooge on a journey into the present Christmas as well as around it. So we get to visit the Cratchit family, especially. We get to see his nephew Fred and his wife and friends and daughter. Then I get to see the life of the town around where he lives, that part. And then beyond that, Ghost of Christmas Present takes them all over the place to remote areas, boats in the middle of the sea, and a lighthouse, and all of that.
I don't think it's
I don't know if I've seen that part where he really takes it apart. But that's what the Ghost of Christmas Present starts with, the immediate our surroundings, and then goes all over the place, and then comes back. I think finishes with, but especially his nephew and actually. Last time, the kind of icebreaker was to think of a treasured Christmas memory. Okay, for this time, what are you most looking forward to for this year's Christmas celebrations? So this Christmas present, what are you looking forward to? Service. Candlelight services. It's beautiful. Yeah, I grew up, the accompanist in my congregation would always drop out on the third verse of Silent Night, so it would just be everybody singing in harmony. It's really with the candles. So, yeah, very much relate to that one. Anybody else for Christmas Eve celebrations? In church or at home? What are you looking forward to? I know if our kids are here, I don't think so. Oysters. Oysters.
We do that too.
Yeah, that's-
We carry on that
that's
tradition from
yeah,
my,
southern thing.
that was from my grandparents in Iowa.
Yeah,
They
that's
always
Iowa.
did oyster stew,
Yeah.
so
But
we
it's
carry
also
that.
out here too.
I think it's on
Yeah.
God.
Your kids like.
No, Darren and my dad and my brother ate that. So we have chili to go with it.
That is an act of faith right there, eating oysters in Iowa in the middle of winter.
I guess, right?
They were-
Right, right,
They
and
were-
I'm sure
Did they not do it? Because I know who were from that.
Not that I know of.
That was an Iowa thing.
The summer has an alright.
What's
They
that?
got, yes, we're here for all you know, so I have yeah, it is still.
We'll get the harvest.
That's right.
Well, the old story is, you don't eat beef on the East Coast, you don't eat shellfish or fish in the Midwest.
We had a food poisoning incident when we were living in Nebraska for years. We had steak Oscar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Giants all track.
No, that's fine. That's a tradition, right?
Yep, that's what it's gonna die.
Well, might have to find an alternative, maybe a clam chowder, shellfish adjacent that you can pass on.
Church did Christmas Eve. It's a throwback to when fruits and weren't easy to get in the winter time, especially around there. And so they would give us a bag. Each family got a bag of fruits in it. Yeah. So it was like a gift.
We always had a giant orange and a giant apple.
I was gonna say, I was gonna get fruit in our stocking too.
But that's not, I mean, that wouldn't be as big of a deal now because
Right.
they just ship in whatever produce from Mexico or
I've had Christmas breakfast with my granddaughters for years. The girls always come over. I mean, we're not talking at 7 o'clock, we're talking, because everybody's so busy, Christmas, my boys and everything. They come before they go somewhere else, so they have to eat twice on Christmas. But I was fixed Christmas brunch breakfast for granddaughters. Nice. Maybe did that yesterday.
Okay.
Flyers.
Takes place.
Flyers.
Well, that's the clear.
She went to Debbie's.
This one's big ice, big oaks,
Big layout.
Vermont, and, for taste, hot water, and
My dad was telling me I should have a hot toddy the other day when I was there.
That used to be the remedy for everything.
Oh, sure. So we got family get-togethers, we've got food dishes, we've got worship services.
As I say, I used to love the midnight Christmas Eve service, we haven't had that. But it was so cool to come out, to end it right at midnight and come out. I guess people didn't want to come out that late. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, so did I.
Should we protest one of the
Yeah, Bob and I would always go to church at 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. For years, he sang in a choir and we belonged to a big church. So the music on Christmas Eve was really outstanding. I don't know what the children did for all that music. I don't remember what mom did. They must have sat there quietly. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I was sure it's a little kid.
Bring the national subway.
Our church never Christmas at Christmas Day. So when we said
Oh, yeah.
that was very special.
Well, I remember this Christmas, Catherine's here with the village, so we had enough, we always had it, but I don't think we had enough Christmas Eve. I don't have it on Christmas Eve.
So part of what happens in this section of Christmas Carol is Scrooge gets shown outside of his own, little bubble, his own very, very limited concept of Christmas Eve. And so each of us has these memories and these traditions that we carry forward still, or some version of them. It's good to hear each other's stories. It's good to hear about how other people celebrate and what's special to them. Doesn't mean you need to copy them. I think that's something that happens nowadays, right? Is you see something and you're like, oh, that looks cool. I want to do that too. And like, how do you think Elf on the Shelf became what it is today, right? So like, these trends pick up. But that wasn't the point of what the Spirit was doing for Scrooge. The point was to say there's so much more that you just don't. And so if you ever have the chance to, I remember as a kid, I'm like, oh, here's the book we're going to read today. It's Christmas traditions from around the world, and like the Dutch people with shoes. So like, it's good to get outside your own comfort zone just to see how other people celebrate, and I think how you appreciate your own traditions too. But also, like, why do you do the things you do? What's the story?
I was impressed with all of the poor people and so happy and joyous on Christmas Day. They didn't have anything.
Right. And that was very much the contrast that the Spirit was showing Scrooge.
He
has
all the money
everything.
and still he was happy.
Miserable, and then these people have nothing. And they're just celebrating, they're jubilant. I mean, there's a reason why Dickens spent so much time with the Cratchits. Right? Not just because of how Scrooge treated Bob, but just to show this stark contrast of how much joy there was in that little room with that meager feast. And talking about, hey, oldest son, you might be able to get a job that you could bring home. What was it, like 5 and 6 pence or something, like a week? Hardly anything. What Scrooge has. So that's kind of the thought with this section. What our discussion will be about is I think perspective, maybe a good way to sum it up. Just to broaden our own and to think of what this holiday can mean, and beyond Christmas too. What does this mean to be this in this Christian life? The abundance of the poor people is a big theme throughout this whole story. So that would be something to touch on. Join in the opening prayer. Stir up our hearts, O Lord, with your Spirit, that we may live each day with the faith that knows you are walking with us every step of the way, the love that opens our eyes to the needs of all those around us. I want to jump right into the discussion questions first, and then come back to the scripture Scrooge of the week. Page 84. At the beginning of Stage 3, Scrooge waits and waits for the next ghost, and nothing came. The whole time, the ghost of Christmas present was just sitting in the next room. Can you relate a time when you waited so anxiously for something that you missed out on something better? The thing was just right there.
I do remember that, but I don't remember what the answer was. But I remember thinking that I was so dumb, missed out on, and I missed out on. And I had benefit. Well done, I just
you hear this with relationships sometimes, right? Where the person, there's a couple that gets divorced or something, or things fall apart. The person then re-meets somebody from their past, like the high school person or whoever it was, like, was right there next to me all the time. I just couldn't see it, right? Maybe that's maybe the plot of a couple more. I think kids do that. I think kids are like so worked up about the present that's coming, or they're like, oh, wow. That gray kind of notebook thing I carry around sometimes. That was a consolation prize for a scholarship. That thing is never fallen apart. I've used that thing for 20 years now. It could be something as simple as that, but sometimes the thing that is just exactly what you needed, you miss out on because you're waiting for something.
Does it have something to do with why you're waiting there so anxiously for Christmas morning to come? You missed all the good of all the before Christmas stuff. Is that part of this, you think?
Sure. I think that's one reason why so many, congregations and pastors are, do the whole, whoa, Nelly on Christmas music before Christmas to try to build up that anticipation and be open to what God is doing now instead of just jumping into the main event, so to speak. Okay, keep that in mind. Keep that sort of missed opportunity or your anxiety makes you miss something better. Number 2. Dickens paints a jolly, warm, generous picture of Christmas time in London. How does that portrayal compare and contrast to today's commercialized bustle of the holidays? What have we lost, but also what have we gained?
Facebook Christmas desire, that perfect, quote unquote, perfect Christmas for the family. You lose the whole purpose of gathering.
I will say that I believe that existed pre-Facebook because I have a relative, I won't name names, who every year would send out the Christmas letter. And my mom would call it the bride letter. Because it was clearly not the actual good, bad, and ugly. It was this weirdly polished version that, everybody's doing wonderful. In fact, they're going to be astronauts. Like, it was just this weird, surreal Christmas letter.
Well, you know my aunt.
I still put, it's only about this long because there are a lot of people that I send Christmas cards to. That's the only time of the year we catch up.
Yeah.
And I just usually say, hey, I'm still here, still volunteering, in church and stuff. But I do say, boys are doing fine. I mean, I don't say what they're doing. I just, we're all well.
Yeah, I'm not anti-Christmas letter notes, but these were like 2-sided page, big paragraphs.
My sister still does that. Everybody, her kids are all grown. She's decorating. She lists every single kid and what they're doing.
And that's fine. But these were like,
I did that.
yeah. But we knew the other stuff that was going on. So it was really kind of weird to get this.
Well, mine goes to people that most of them are back in the Midwest or college friends or, people that's the only time of year we catch up. But I get less and less Christmas cards every year. And,
Wonder why.
well, but it's really kind of sad. There's a couple of us that are retired and Beverly still sends cards and I do. And I don't know why people don't. I guess they all send text messages, Merry Christmas. To me, that's not the same thing. Sorry if you're the person who does that,
but that would be an example of something that has been gained or lost. For some people, that's easier than trying to buy the cards, address the cards, do all the things. I can reach out to anybody, but you lose something that had a different category.
There's no personal touch to it.
The commercialization, like last year, there was a twinkling tree that somebody had for sale that people were chasing down all over the country because they had to have the tree for Christmas.
Sure.
It's a freaking Christmas tree with lights on it, people. It doesn't do anything special.
Please refer them to the Charlie Brown Christmas special.
Yes.
One of the big things, Caroline came over and decorated my Christmas tree. She does my decorating now. But it was really neat because as she was putting the ornaments on, I'm sitting here telling her where every one of these, some of them were the first ornaments we had when we lived in Germany. We were first married. A couple of them were my parents from in the 30s, So I'm giving her the family history, whether she likes it or not.
That's one. That's the part. Part of what Dickens does is he just shows everybody like going to the grocery, going to the butcher. It wasn't just that you go to the supermarket. Like everybody was involved, and there's even a line in there about I don't understand how some of these houses, how are none of these houses empty? Because everybody's going somewhere. Shouldn't some of them be empty because everybody's going somewhere else? Like there was definitely more of a tight knit community going on.
But England celebrates, they have Christmas and then they have Boxing Day. Yeah, they don't do it all at once.
That's where the servants get served.
Yeah,
That's the
so I
service
don't know if did that take part of this book too, or
No, we stopped.
we kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but in England, they still do that, but they're still, not diversified stores, they still like a pharmacy does nothing but drugs and meat.
Yeah.
The meat guy does nothing but meat, so they still do that.
Okay.
They're still diversified like that, they're not, they have supermarkets,
Yeah.
but they have a lot of those other, in the small villages and things, they're all separated, just like we were in here still.
Yeah, that creates a different atmosphere. And nowadays too, I think there's the big travel. Like, who's gonna host? Where are you going?
Oh, going to Disney World.
Well, and then
A lot of them
a lot of as you have kids and they get older and they get married, and then who's in your house and in-laws house, everybody it gets real complicated.
Doing those here.
And no, that is exactly true. For those of us who have kids, just wait, when your kids grow up, they'll go, your son, they'll go to his wife's family, Your daughter will
You
come
gotta
to your
balance.
house.
You never know. You got balance like these Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Then you have kids and you just say, I'm not traveling, I'm coming to us, right?
That's
Right.
Not at all.
Yes, especially in the morning, Christmas morning.
When you get so far away like I was, you didn't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's one year we went back to Iowa for Christmas. And on the way back, we said to the kids, wasn't that fun? They said, yeah, but they just wanted to stay home. They weren't used to all the family and the relatives and the hoopla.
And I will say too, for me, or for us, it was weird because we work on most holidays,
Right,
and so, in California especially, family was far away and very expensive to get to. They didn't seem to come to us very often, so we had different members of the congregation just kind of adopt us. Like you come to our house for Thanksgiving, or you're invited to our house for Christmas tree. So that was both a real blessing, but also then a little bit because you weren't just going to your family, just
Yeah, right, yeah.
But it was still like that generosity. I know our kids remember like that we would go to somebody else's house.
Bella Susan came from New York on Christmas Eve. When they lived across the street from them, I would have Christmas Eve dinner, and I don't even remember, but she came. We didn't do it on Christmas Day. I guess we did Christmas Eve and then went to church or something. I'm not sure.
I'm going to complain about a commercial really quick. So there's a Kroger commercial that's out right, and the little kid sees the lady across the street or whatever living all by herself.
Yeah.
Takes a bunch of cookies and things, and drops it at her house, and then he comes back, and the parents are like, and so, but then they make a whole meal, and the way the commercial looks, it looks like they go to her house and then eat there.
Right.
And that really bugs me. I'm like, invite her over.
They were dropping off the food and then she invited them in.
That's the part I wish they showed.
Oh, I thought they do show that.
Maybe they do.
Maybe
It just looks like they invite themselves. But either way, like,
I like that commercial.
but there's not a lot of outside the family interactions at Christmas time. I know some folks will do like Friendsgiving, but you know, what do you do when you can't have your family? But how do you create some kind of tradition or celebration?
See, we've never had family. I was in.
No.
And when we were military, there were, especially the couples that didn't have kids, we would get together for Christmas. Now, lots of times it turned into a margarita party or something.
There's a time and place for that. Alright, number 3. Scrooge accuses the spirit of certain forms of strict religiosity that were present in Dickens' time. Remember, this was right after Cromwell, who was very Puritan, very strict, religious laws superimposed over civic laws. So you weren't allowed on things like blue laws, your clothes, like some clothes on Sunday.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
oh yeah. Parts of Wisconsin, parts of, excuse me, Iowa, especially, it seemed like there was a correlation where there were Dutch communities. There was this strain of the Reformed Church that was very, very strict about that. So,
There were blue laws here in Virginia.
yeah, oh yeah,
So we lived here. Right.
yeah.
I remember very clearly.
But even less joyless than that, like even more strict and no dancing, no frivolity, no celebrations, nothing. So Dickens works this in, and he says, this is, where was it? This is page, I should have written it down. Here it is, page 63. I wonder you, of all beings, and the many worlds about us, should desire to cramp these people's opportunities of innocent enjoyment. Like, why? Thinking that the spirit and the heavenly realms, and the church were one and the same. Right? So why would you limit people to only celebrating one day? Why would you take this away from them? And he says, I, cried the spirit, he would deprive them of their means of dining every 7th day, often the only day on which they can be sent to dine at all, wouldn't you? You seek to close these places on the 7th day, and it comes to the same thing. I seek, forgive me if I'm wrong, it has been done in your name, or at least in that of your family. There are some upon this earth of yours, who lay claim to know us, and who do their deeds of passion, pride, ill will, hatred, envy, bigotry, and selfishness in our name, who are as strange to us and all our kith and kin as if they had never lived. Remember that, and charge their doings on themselves, not us. So there are those who speak in God's name, impose these rules on people, but they're not speaking for us. That doesn't seem to fit with a lot of the other stuff in the story, but maybe those who would like to be Scrooge in church matters, impose on people these strict rules. It's joyless.
He was not proponent of
No. But it says, how could this indictment apply to the church and its religious practices today? I don't know if Lutheran churches, and at least the LCA Lutheran churches in general, are really coming down hard on people for celebrating on the wrong day of the week. But there are still churches in our world, in our society, that are much more strict about what you can and can't. A big long list of what isn't allowed and what would be frowned upon, what would stain your soul or affect your holiness. Not as common as it once was.
It's a church is the same, unless you have born again experience.
Sure.
You go belong.
I had my son's mother-in-law sent me a letter one year in the spirit of Christmas, telling me that I realized that I wasn't going to go to heaven as long as I stayed in that church. And she just wanted me to think about that.
I'm sure it was.
Why you going to
I'm guessing she was 100% sincere,
Oh, she was.
worried about it.
And she was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, she and I became friends. But We didn't agree with anything.
That's good.
She was probably good.
Well, okay, then let's contrast that with Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim, number 4, hopes people see him at church so that they remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind see.
Oh,
So it's okay that I'm on crutches and weak and frail, because maybe it'll help other people remember that Jesus came to heal. Do you see Christ in your own infirmities or in the infirmities of others? Do folks nowadays look upon the folks that's perhaps Hanover Adult Center or the Paralympics? Do they look at them and say, wow, I see Christ there?
Honestly, I don't think register.
Do you look at somebody else's infirmity, their perceived weakness, and think, Christ came for such as these?
I have a friend who kind of has a positive attitude like that. She doesn't have very much at all. She's keeps in touch with some friends that have a lot of problems. And she always says, but for the grace of God, alive.
Sure.
Really, it impresses me. Just to handle some of the same.
Yeah, we had that conversation once before about that expression.
You didn't like it.
It depends on the context. Sometimes I've heard it said as sort of Jesus' parable of the poor widow and the rich folks. And sometimes it could be said as, well, I'm glad I'm not that looking down. But other times it can be sort of a perspective and a whole thing. But yeah, it's
Well, that's why I have the opportunity to have a different view. But the thing I noticed is like yesterday in the Christmas parade bowling ring, there were lots of kids and they were all excited about seeing Santa Claus and all that. And you tell some of the children had difficulties of different whatever, and they were just as happy as the normal children.
sure.
And to me, that's a positive thing. They don't look upon themselves as being any less able than other children.
That's why I'm glad that this partnership is developing with Hanover Adults, that we'll have some of their clients having lunch in our building. Maybe we can have some folks over there volunteering, because I think a lot of the tendency is just to say, oh, well, I'll stand out. Looking at folks with these struggles makes me sad. It makes me, oh, mommy, look at that person that has a prosthetic leg. Oh, no, don't say anything. This is weird dynamic of acknowledging, but also like, we don't want to.
Well, I think in my case, I know, probably my mother, would tell me not to stare or whatever, just because, you don't want to make the person feel uneasy.
Right.
And that could very easily translate into, don't look at them at all, or just look down on them. Was well intended on my
Of course. Yeah. What were you gonna say now?
I was gonna say, I love the stories you're saying when I see Christ coming in play when there's these individuals that have those additional struggles, but seeing how kids interact and wrap around those kids. Like there's a young man at the high school level who's autistic and wants nothing more than be a part of the football team. And he's a member of the team. He might be the water boy, but he will high five every boy, the team has embraced him, I love the stories, like there's a new movie coming out, there's a book to The Unbreakable Boy, Wonder, like I love those, seeing how the normal kid, react and embrace, and I know it doesn't always happen that way, but always when you see those stories, I'm like, you know what, I think it's a good time to challenge.
Yeah.
Well, it's like there's a commercial TV that I don't know if it's a PSA or what it is, but it's kids in a basketball game, and they put the child in with handicap.
And yeah.
They shoot the goal.
Right.
And the team's all jumping up and down.
Down
And the
here,
kid,
racing.
coach, the referee says, but they lost.
Right. But they won,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's a great example because then it's not just pitying somebody.
Right.
It's including and
Including.
seeing the humanity. Yeah. So that
But celebrate their success.
It's exactly right.
yeah. And yeah, in some ways I think that's where Tiny Tim's comes from. Number 5. When Scrooge asks the spirit about Tiny Tim's fate, it affirms that the outcomes of the future were changeable. It's like, oh spirit, please tell me he's still there. And the spirit's like, well, unless things change, all I see is a crutch sitting in the corner gathering dust, an empty chair. Right? That's one of the gut punches of this story, especially in the movie versions. So what present situations of those around you can you positively impact this Christmas season? We do get caught up in our own running around and stuff. So that's part of what the Spirit is doing for Scrooge, getting them to see outside all these people, all their lives. Who could you be having a positive impact on? Not just at Christmas. Think about that. At 2 points, number 6, the Ghost of Christmas Present quotes Scrooge's past heinous remarks back to him. Right? This goes back to week 1 with Nathan talking to David about what he did to Bathsheba and Uriah, saying, "You are," resulting in Scrooge's penitence and grief. What words or actions have you said or done in this past week or farther that you wish you could take back? What if somebody quoted you back to you? And you're like, oh. So that's maybe 2 sides. There's a long gospel here. These 2 questions. You know, what opportunities are there for you to live out your faith, to have a positive impact on somebody else, to extend the gifts you've been given, blessed to be a blessing? And then what are things that you've said or done that if somebody sent them back to you would just lay you low? Yeah. And it's the something about the surplus population, right? Or, you know, that's what these prisons and stuff are for, right? What do they need? What do they need my help for? So this little bit of compassion and empathy that these spirits kind of foist on Scrooge, then they add back in his own words. That's quite the indictment.
I think that the shooting in New York, there's been so many.
Sure.
I don't do Facebook or anything, but evidently there's been a lot of people who only got what they deserved. More of them should, you know. Nobody deserves to be shot, whether you're head of a bad corporation or not.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, that's a great example. So here's a company that is on record as being possibly the worst one to its customers, the most claims denied, the biggest rigmarole to get coverage for your, healthcare needs. Think if your kid is in the hospital or your loved ones. But does that mean that you celebrate that somebody shot their CEO? Is that going to change anything? So it's an interesting both and that you can understand where their approval and where their anger is coming from, but also not wanting to,
encourage you.
exactly. So how do you change something that is really hurting a lot of people without adding more violence to it? Yeah.
That's where the middle guys are stuck, doesn't it? You know, I always think of myself as a middle guy, all of us probably. And we get stuck there. We don't have much power, it doesn't seem.
It feels that way sometimes. How do you change it? How do we have any impact on these gigantic problems? What could any one of us or any small group of us do? Is Scrooge going to solve the problems of poverty and inequality among the classes in London? No. But can he have an impact on his employees, on his neighbors? Yeah. Do you need to have the riches that Scrooge has to have that impact on each other? No, that's what he saw. Looking out, like look at the joy these people have, even in a lighthouse, even on a boat, as they're telling Christmas stories and having fellowship with one another and being a blessing to each other. They're doing so much with so little. What could he be doing? So that's part of the power of the story, right? Is that what is it? Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility. So Scrooge, because of his wealth, because of his position, his actions or inactions will have a greater ripple effect. But anybody and everybody has a chance to bring some joy and some light. The symbol of the Ghost of Christmas Present is a lamp that looks like a cornucopia, right? So it's a shining light in the symbol of abundance, generosity. Even as he ages, because he's just not just a day old, but he's like a mayfly, right? Like that's his whole day. And his 1,800 and some siblings are the years that came before. That's he's going to shine bright for this day, this one Christmas day. Christmas Eve. But that the light he shines is he's sitting on a throne of food, right? That's kind of number 7 and number 8. So no matter the distance separating people, they all take the same joy in Christmas. There's nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. I mean, anybody can spread laughter. Distance. Scrooge's nephew, he overhears Fred observe that Scrooge's miserable conduct only hurts himself. I would beg to differ with that. I think it hurts Scrooge the most because of what he's missing. But it is hurting more than just Scrooge. It's hurting Cratchit. It's hurting the caroler. It's hurting the guys who came to ask for charity, turned away. It's hurting retrospectively Marley, who's carrying these chains around. Yeah. Let's make sure we get to the other questions are good. Especially thinking about how the kids he sees under Spirit's robes are ignorance and want. And they're like clawing, emaciated, just scary.
I don't really understand that.
Ignorance and want. What is that? Well, what would be the contrast to this generosity and abundance of Christmas? It would be ignorance, not even understanding or not caring about the world around you, and want, especially for Dickens. In London at that time, there was so much. There were so many people who couldn't even think about being generous because their entire existence was consumed with what they did. So much environment.
Street urchins.
If you read anything from that era, Sherlock Holmes stuff, or some of the Dickens books, they go pretty brilliant to the undesirable, right? All the urchins. There's, on a side note, have you seen the thing on Netflix? There was a couple of movies about Enola Holmes. It was supposed to be Sherlock Holmes' sister. It's like a young adult kind of thing. But they're based on some books that are written for, middle school, high schoolers. But the author gets into a lot of research about what it was actually like and how Enola's going through the streets and having her eyes open to what it was like, how difficult it was for people. So, but, if you're okay reading something written for a little younger audience, I actually recommend this thing. Quick and easy reads, but there's a lot of history.
And all the
Yes, like
Yeah.
But the way they talk about it is, her mother always told her you'll do quite well alone, Enola, and Enola is alone backwards. So you can make it. You don't need somebody to help you do it. You'll be quite well on your own. So they're really decent books. Okay, let's look at our scripture Scrooge today. This is Mark 10. It's actually a story we read only a few weeks ago. So Mark 10, verses 17 to 27. You got it, Roger? You want to read it?
As he was setting out on a journey, a man ran up, knelt before him, and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit the eternal life?" Jesus said to him, Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. You know the commandment, you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witnesses, and you shall not defraud. Honor your father and your mother. He said to him, Teacher, I have kept all these since my youth. Jesus looked at him, loved him, and said, You lack one thing. Go and sell all you own and give the money to the poor, and you will give the money, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me. When he heard this, he was shocked and went away grieving, for he had many possessions. How much more?
We can the account of the young man who approaches Jesus is haunting. This is page 81 here. Jesus' answer to the young man's question is daunting. Give up everything. Follow me. Much of Jesus' teaching on wealth is hard to swallow, maybe because he hits pretty close to home. You can visualize the effects of his words in Mark's Gospel. What is it? He was shocked and went away grieving. This translation is, At this the man's face fell. He went away sad. The young man's attachment to his wealth is the same attachment we see in Ebenezer Scrooge. You just can't let go. None of us can. We all have something we can't let go of. It could be money, it could be possessions, it could be a grudge, it could be a hurt, it could be a relationship that's actually harmful. Plenty of things we have a hard time. Christ tells us the same thing. One thing you lack. Tells us to give up the one thing he knows we can't until we come to the same point as the disciples. Who then can be saved? At which point he says, all things are possible with God. God and Jesus is the only one who can give up everything, which is just what he did, even to giving up his life so that we can be saved. Jesus does the things that we can't for us. God knows that we won't be able to, but Jesus lets go for us. So definitely this Scrooge-like idea for this guy here. It's like, I've done everything right. Look at what I've built for myself. Now I just want to make sure my spirit, my soul is in a good place too. Right? So what must I do to attain eternal? I'd also like to check that off my list, please. And if I followed all the commandments, and Jesus says, all right, well, great. All that's left is to keep back and say,
This can be parallel to today when you have to find your own saving. In other words, you have to find God. God doesn't find you. And you have to be baptized every time there's something wrong because it's up to you to make it good. And that's what basically he's saying here, that you don't have to do that.
That's, I mean, to let go of everything. Who could do that? There's some folks that will go into a monastery. That's not how most people operate.
We can't give up, say one thing, the Father says, utterly possible.
Now, a lot of folks, as they get older, I've heard folks say that they realize they didn't do all that stuff. Right? But when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see it. If we could export the perspective that comes with, getting older and more mature, and the wisdom, if we could give that to the younger folks, I mean, people try, right? Yeah, they give advice all the time.
They already know all of it.
Right? You know that saying is the truth twice all the time.
Yeah. That doesn't apply to me. Page 86. At the party thrown by Scrooge's nephew and niece, the boisterous group revels in a series of children's games. Just fun little party. To which the narrator observes, it is good to be children sometimes, and never better than Christmas, when its mighty founder was a child himself. Maybe that's where a lot of these traditions come from. Just fun and silly things, and trying to have that childlike one. The fun was so infectious that even Scrooge didn't help but get into it. He was just as transparent as Roger's drawing, like nobody could see him. So how about taking some time to be a child right now? I did not bring any more games, but maybe this week get out, shoot some ladders, or make a gingerbread house just for fun, not because you're entering in a contest. You know, just do something that's innocent. Play a game with a friend, with a kid. That's something fun. Follow Dickens's wise observation. Really get into it, just like you did when you were a kid, and see what shakes loose from your soul and your spirit if you just let go a little bit. And you can't give up all your possessions, but you can let go of a little bit of the attitudes or the prim and proper or whatever it is. I completely forgot to read the summaries. Everybody kind of get the idea of what the Ghost of Christmas Present was? Okay. Page 82, your homework this week. Just look through this Christmas carol of A Little Town of Bethlehem. I want to highlight one thing. Second verse, close to the end on page 82, so second verse of A Little Town of Bethlehem. But in this world of sin, where meek souls will receive him, still the dear Christ enters in. So I want to compare that or put that alongside page 77. Down at the bottom. Much they saw and far they went. Many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The Spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and gaol, in misery's every refuge, where vain man and his little brief authority had not made fast the door, barred the Spirit out. He left his blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts. So, in what ways do we bar the door, make fast the door, and bar the Spirit of joy, the Spirit of abundance? Because that's what Scrooge had been doing. Nothing could penetrate that until Marley and his chains comes through. So in what ways do we make fast the door and bar out this spirit of generosity? Any other thoughts from this week's section or reading that we haven't talked about?
Say that last question.
Sure. Down at the bottom of page 77, it says that the Spirit took Scrooge everywhere, except where vain man in his little brief authority had made fast the door and barred the Spirit out. Those are the only places they couldn't visit. So in what ways do we hold fast the door and bar the Spirit of generosity? Abundance from our Christmases, but from our lives. But yeah, if you haven't read through this yet, read through it and just look at the lists of the foods, the attitudes, the joy, the celebrations, and contrast that with how Scrooge had his life. Abundance of food, abundance of feast, abundance of goodwill. The Spirit would sprinkle his light on people, and they'd be like, you know what? Why are we arguing? Why am I getting married? It's Christmas. This is the time. Go back and read when Bob Cratchit proposes a toast to Scrooge, how it puts a damper on the party for 5 minutes until they get out. Yeah. His wife was not. No, not at all. Right? Anybody else? Last call. Okay. In that case, let's close with prayer. That is page 87. Gracious God, we thank you for this day. We ask that you would enter into our lives even if we try to bar the door. Shine your light of generosity and plenty into us so that we might in turn be generous and abundant to those around us. At Christmas time especially, but all year round. Teach us your goodness. Teach us to be childlike and open with the grace we have received. God, we pray all these things, rejoicing in the knowledge that with you nothing is impossible, and all things are possible through your Son, our Savior Jesus Christ. Okay, next week we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing all your Christmas stories and memories and traditions. That was fun.